Okay, I just had to press the record button to record this so we can post this in the global class afterwards. Okay, one more student is coming in. Incredibly, everyone, we are ready to begin, more or less on time. We are connected well. I think this could be excellent, as long as I don't fall underneath the table here slouching so that you can see everybody's face, but anyways, I will try and find the right position. Okay, Jason, good. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to say before I do just a very brief introduction and then let Marcelo take over is that at 9:45 here in Oshawa this morning, we're having a security drill. It's a hold, secure and hold drill. You may hear a bell go off here. We will just continue with the class unless a security guard comes in and drags us out. Okay, so just be aware that if a bell starts to go off, nothing is happening here, at least today. Sometimes things happen here, but not today, hopefully. Just a drill. Okay, so I think we're ready to begin. Okay? Wonderful. Welcome, everyone, to our global class on sustainability, new energies, how we're going to go into the future in a world without fossil fuels. And the guest we have today is somebody who can speak to this not only in terms of important ideas, which he has dedicated his life to, but his personal experience as well is a testament to somebody who has the courage to live by his dreams and do something good for the world. Marcelo has quite an adventure to tell, and you'll have lots of time to talk to him about that. I simply wanted to say before we begin, just to welcome Marcelo himself from Lima in Peru. It is the same time in Lima right now as it is in Oshawa. It's about 9:10 in the morning. You see him wearing a t-shirt that is a symbol of his his project, the power of one. The power of one person to make a real difference in the world. He's a living example of that. So I welcome Marcelo, we all do. We welcome students from the Mahindra United World College in India. Great to see you all, Cyrus and the students there. We've had classes with you before, many, and the students have always had very thoughtful things to contribute. And of course, Irena with her students in Moscow at the Moscow International Gymnasia, the same. They always come prepared with very thoughtful, insightful things to say. So I expect this will be a very rich, reflective global class. The idea that we're looking at today, when we look at the big picture, which is what global classes are all about, there is a very big picture that I'm sure many of you are aware of, and that is we have entered not just a new century, but a new millennium. We're now in the 2000s, and we are going to be looked back upon by those who come after us as those who entered the new millennium. We're the ones, and the result is it's not just a number change. We're not just going from the ones to the twos, but it does appear that we are entering an age of consequence, which means that there is, it appears, a consequence to human progress. We've been getting as far as we have globally in advancing so rapidly, all 7 billion of us on the planet, largely through very powerful energy sources. And that energy source, the leading one, is fossil fuels. And we now know there's a great consequence to extracting enormous amount of fossil fuels to provide us with our oil, our petroleum, and our plastic products, and all the many things that are made from oil. They shape our modern world. When we run out of that source of energy, what are we going to do? And it's estimated now that we will begin to seriously run out of a finite source of energy in about 50 years, or even less. There are people who are thinking very seriously about this problem, who don't care what others tell them. They believe and they know that there is a serious issue that humanity is facing, and Marcelo is one of those who has built his own solar-powered vehicle. Nobody's done that quite like him. Then he took it and he drove it all across a very big country, Canada, all the way to the Arctic to demonstrate to the world what can be done with solar power. This is a person I personally believe, 50, 100 years from now, who will be remembered as somebody who was helping to lead the way and provide important knowledge to the world. So we're privileged to have him in our class today. I don't want to say much more, except that I want to give you all, and including myself, the opportunity to hear him, speak with him, and try and look ahead at what are we going to do for a world where our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren may have to grapple with very serious energy problems. Are we going to help them do that now? Do we care at all? Or do we just let them deal with it themselves? Do we have a moral obligation to make sure that we leave the world in a better place for our descendants? So that's the big picture, and I'm going to give it over to Marcelo right now. I'm going to mute my microphone, and we will begin. I'll let Marcelo lead the class, and I'll jump in, and we'll jump in with questions, and however he wants to lead it, he's welcome to lead it however he likes. So go ahead, Marcelo.
Well, good morning, Lon. Good evening, Irina, Sumit, and everyone. It is a pleasure to be here and share my experience with the project with you all. Well, I'd like to begin by inviting you to participate in this as a conversation, as a discussion, as a way for us to share ideas and how we can fix a problem. And the problem that I see that need to be fixed is how we use our natural resources and what's available to us, and because that can compromise our own future. What inspired me to begin a long journey with the solar car was what I experienced growing up in Brazil. Um, when I was a child, I used to go down to the coast for on vacation, and we used to drive by a city called Cubatão. When I was a child, Cubatão was considered to be the most polluted city in the world. Pollution from oil refineries was so toxic that people in Cubatão were getting sick. Babies in Cubatão were being born with all kinds of birth defects, no limbs, no brains. The toxicity of the oil refineries in the vicinity of the city was so bad that even the Atlantic forest was dying. When I was in fifth grade, in a science class, we were learning about pollution. I asked the teacher why adults pollute. The teacher said, that's the price of progress. And we know that's not true. So if a child asks me that question, I will not give the same answer because we know better. How can we degrade the environment, fauna, flora, destroy ourselves and call it progress? It's quite the contrary. Um, in São Paulo, the city that I grew up, its main rivers have been dead since before I was born. I'm 46 years old. Um, as the rivers enter the Great São Paulo area, they become an open sewage. They're unable to sustain life. The city of São Paulo, most of the soil that the city was built over is has been paved by concrete or asphalt. So often a very strong rain will cause floods. So seeing all that, it really bothered me. I I want clean air, I want clean land, and I want clean water. And I want to do something to help. I didn't know how. I thought, I'm just one person. What can I do? And what inspired me to begin acting was one day watching the news, I saw a glimpse about a solar car race in Australia, and I thought, how cool is that? A race of cars powered by light. I thought, that's the future. I want to build a solar car and participate. But I thought, you know what? I don't have the means. I don't have the education, the resources. I can't do this. This is a dream for somebody else to dream not for myself. So I buried the idea and I left on the back burner, and I left there for many years. But every once in a while, the idea would come back to haunt me, still alive. And everything we do in life is based on two things, pain or pleasure. If it hurts, we do something about it because it hurts, or it feels good, we do something about it because it feels good. For me, the pain of not following the dream became unbearable. I had to do something about it. I had to give it a try. What pushed me over the edge was a friend of mine. I wouldn't stop talking about solar cars. He got fed up. He did some research online, printed a stack of paper, and gave it to me. On the top page, it said it takes 50,000 working hours to build a solar car. He circled the 50,000 and he wrote, that's equivalent of one person working 40 hours per week for 25 years. Good luck, Marcelo. When I saw that, it scared me. I thought, if it's going to take an engineer 25 years to build a solar car, it will take me much longer. So I better start it now. Now, I had no idea uh, where to begin. I had never built a car before, so I had no idea. So I began with sketches. From the sketches, I made models out of foam and wood. Then I found some people to help me create the computer graphics, and from that we built a half-scale model for the wind tunnel to learn how the design would behave in the wind. And we learned that it was generating some lift, but it was going to be safe driving at highway speeds. Even though flying is not the problem is landing. The design was still safe. So I slowly the project started taking life and growing, and while I was developing the project, um, the idea of building a car to compete in Australia at the World Solar Challenge also evolved. I decided to do something very unique and challenging. I decided to drive the car to the Arctic. And the I had people telling me it was going to be impossible. When you think of solar cars, usually you think of a tropical country in the middle of the summer driving on flat roads. Getting to the Arctic is challenging. In Canada, there is only one road. It's a gravel road, 750 kilometers. That's about 450 miles. On that road, you cross the Continental Divide 3 times, so you're constantly going up and down. And on top of that, the sun is low in the horizon, so not the ideal place to have a solar car. Nevertheless, the car was driven to the Arctic, then around Alaska, around North America, and it was taken back to the Arctic. Um, when I got to the Arctic for the first time, someone said to me, "Well, now we have another challenge, which is to cross the longest ice road in the world." And that stuck to my mind. A year later, I ended up going back to the Arctic and to take on that challenge. And when you think of electric cars or cars in general, if you live in a cold country, in a country with cold climate, sometimes your car won't start if it is too cold because the cold affects the battery. So as it doesn't allow the battery to get enough juice to start the engine sometimes. And driving a solar car, which is a pure electric car in the Arctic, also presented a challenge, not only to the vehicle, to the battery, but also for the driver. I'll put things in perspective a little bit. So one way of looking to the solar car, it is an electric car. It has a bank of batteries that store electricity, an electric motor that drives the car, but instead of plugging into the wall to charge the batteries, the car charges its batteries via the solar cells. The top of the car is covered in solar cells, and the cells convert light into electricity. So now driving a pure electric car at below freezing temperatures across the Arctic presented a great technological challenge. Nevertheless, we did it. Now, the beauty of the power of one and, and is its people. The car was built by flight attendants, nurses, homemakers, students, teachers, people from all walks of life. And we had people from about 24 countries. We had people from China, we had people from India, we had someone from Russia as well. from Canada, Brazil. It was a very international project. And I think so it goes well with the global class. It's awesome to have today um, Canada, Russia, India. I live in Canada. I'm from Brazil, but I happen to be in Peru today. So this is exciting. Um, so it was interesting to have accomplished that. It just goes to show me that if there is a will, there is a way. Um, I may be using some strong words, but I believe that we're a bunch of hypocrites. We're all waiting for a government, someone or something to save the planet for us, and it's not going to happen. There is technology that's clean and sustainable we could be using today, but we lack the political will. Perhaps the economics is at play. Some people may say, well, there is still a lot of money to be made with fossil fuel. Yes, but there are consequences to our actions. One thing that I learned while in the Arctic is that since the late 80s, the Canadian government has been asking mothers not to breastfeed their babies because they're contaminated. They're contaminated with pesticides. Well, there is no farming in the Arctic, so where does the pesticide comes from? From all the countries. So what happened is when we spray pesticides in our crops, some of it stays in the food we eat, some of it stays in the soil. What stays in the soil gets washed away when it rains. It ends up in streams, rivers, eventually in the ocean. In the ocean, there is a microorganism called phytoplankton that's a basic staple to krill and shrimp. So when the shrimp eats the contaminated plankton, the toxins stays in its fatty cells. It can't get rid of it. A fish, to grow 1 pound, it has to eat 20 pounds of shrimp. And the bigger the fish, the higher the contamination. And so our actions locally have a global impact. So we have to think about how we're using our resources, what we're doing to the planet and to ourselves, because our future is at risk. Now, I don't want to paint a gloomy vision of the future. I'm excited about being alive today. I'm excited about being part of a solution. We are learning so much, and I'm grateful for the discovery of fossil fuel. If we look in our um, somewhat recent history, not too far back, about 500 years ago, we're still using, or 300 years ago, we're actually as 200 years ago, we were using whale oil. We didn't stop using whale oil because we ran out of whales. We started using coal. We found something better. And that gave us the Industrial Revolution and an incredible progress. We didn't stop using coal because we ran out of coal. We discovered petroleum. And look at the advancements that we got since then with plastics and all kinds of well, the energy density of fossil fuel is fantastic. We can do so much with so little. But the problem with that is that it's not sustainable. We can't make enough fossil fuel uh, to provide our energy needs in a sustainable way. Um, Talking, I guess uh, one of the ways we use energy the most is for transportation. And having built an electric car, um, I guess one of the things that you hear people may say, well, if you're driving an electric car and you're using a thermoelectric station to generate electricity by burning coal to charge your electric car, you're still generating pollution. Well, yes, but that's only about 40 grams, and that's including the transportation, the storage, and the burning of the coal, because the plant is it's running at a very high efficiency. Now, if we want to put things in perspective, when you use um, gasoline, gasoline alone, um, so at an electric car will if you're using electricity from a coal fire station, um, you're producing about 40 grams of CO2 per kilowatt. Now, gasoline would be equivalent to grams of CO2. So that's 3 times more. And that's only looking at gasoline itself. Now, if you look at uh, the drilling for oil, the pumping, the storing, then the shipping, the storing, the refining of oil into gasoline, then again the pumping, the storing, the transporting, the storing to a gas station, uh, the pumping and the delivery, then the amount of CO2 goes much higher. So that's anywhere between 450 grams of CO2 to about 500, anywhere between 450 to 500 grams of CO2.
Marcelo,
So
can I Sorry, go ahead. Can I just
absolutely,
stop you for
yes.
2 seconds, because there's a lot of information that you're giving, technical information that I'd like to deal with in the class. But first, you've given us an amazing story of somebody who has committed himself to solving a difficult problem through the power of one. And I just wanted to stop for a second, if you don't mind, just to kind of, I do this often as a teacher, talk for 10 or 15 minutes and then just review a little bit so we can absorb the important information. I wanted to just ask if there are any students in Russia, in India, or here who would like to comment before we let Marcelo continue. Do you have any questions or concerns? You're looking at somebody who is, unafraid to tackle a very serious global issue, and he has essentially said, don't wait for anybody else to do it. Let's do it ourselves. We need to take responsibility for this. And we can. One person can. So, just curious, does anyone want to comment at this point? I see in Russia, I see things in your hands. Do you have prepared statements? I've seen this before from Russia, some very good prepared thoughts. Is that what I'm seeing?
No, these are just lesson plans and our names there.
Okay, sure.
Sure. But that's fantastic, Marcelo, what you have done. Yeah, so that's incredibly fantastic. So it should be
Good. Thank you.
such a big potential and such a person. So that's great.
Thank you, Irina. And I guess one of the messages that I'd like to leave with this global class, to your students is that if you have a dream, you know what, just believe that, think of it that the only obstacle between you and your dreams is yourself. You can accomplish anything you set your minds to it.
Make sure you mute your microphone, Irena, when you're not speaking. We're getting some echoing. There we go. I can see it on the screen here, so excellent. Sorry, Marcelo, did you want to add to what Irene just said?
Yeah, I was saying that on that topic of in the process we broke world records and we set world firsts, and the biggest challenge wasn't actually building the car. The biggest challenge, at least for me personally, was to believe that I could do it. That was challenging. It took me more time to convince myself to build the dream, to build the solar car, than to actually build. The actual building of the car took 2.5 years of planning, 3 years to build. And if I may elaborate on that a little bit more, it took me 3 years fighting the government to make a long story short. I wasn't allowed to drive the car in Ontario, and the solar car happened to be built in Ontario. So I was able to drive the car everywhere else but in the province of Ontario. That
Can I
politics.
just jump in for a second to say, to let the students in Russia and India know, Ontario is a province of Canada, and Canadians like to see themselves as sort of progressive and multicultural and open to the world. Actually, that's not entirely true. It's something to be a little bit ashamed of, that in our province, Oshawa, where we are now, is in the province of Ontario, has a law, an old law, that basically said, and Marcelo, do you want to continue?
Sure, absolutely. Let me explain, give a little bit more background on that. Basically, in 2004, there were 6 solar cars teams from 3 from the province of Ontario and 3 from the province of Quebec, and they were doing a demo tour to demonstrate their technology and their solar cars. And on the first leg of the journey, there was an accident. Unfortunately, there was a fatality. And because of that, the province of Ontario, the Minister of Transportation at the time, decided to impose a moratorium. They said no more permits for solar cars. Now, think about that for a moment. I think was a draconian measure, was very drastic. If there is an accident with a bicycle, would you say no more bicycles? Or if there is an accident with Volkswagen Beetle, would you say no more Volkswagen Beetle? So that was absurd what they did. So I contacted the Minister of Transportation, and a year later in 2005, I invited the Minister of Transportation to participate in the project with us. I asked them to give me the opportunity to work with them. There was no interest. They weren't even interested in keeping a line of communication. Um, I have I had invested so much into the project, and so many people have believed and helped me turn that dream into reality. I didn't want the idea to die. I didn't want the project to come to an end. So I started looking for alternatives. I came across a 1949 Geneva Treaty that overrules local laws. For example, if I build a car from Brazil can drive in Russia, even though it may not comply with the Russian rules and regulations. But if both countries have signed the treaty, a car from Brazil can drive in Russia, and a car from Russia could drive in Brazil. So I started looking around the world for countries that had signed the treaty. Canada signed the treaty in 1949. I ended up licensing the car in the country of Barbados. I took the car to Barbados, I licensed the car there, and in the process, I communicated with the Minister of Transportation, with the Premier of the province of Ontario at the time, and I said I was licensing the car on another country, and the car was going to be protected by the 1949 Geneva Treaty, and there was nothing that him or his government could do to stop me. Yet I invite them to participate in the project. Well, for my surprise, I received a letter saying a solar car with a foreign license plate will not be allowed on Ontario public roads. So the province of Ontario was breaking the treaty that Canada as a country had signed to stop me from driving a car in Ontario. And I could had spent years fighting the government, but instead I said, okay, so I decided to drive the car everywhere else but in the province of Ontario. So even though Toronto, Ontario was home for me, I had a symbolic drive at Seneca College at their parking lot. I put the car in a trailer, drove to across the border just about an hour away, an hour and 40 minutes away in Buffalo, New York, and began driving. I drove around Ontario. I entered Canada in the province of Manitoba, and then I drove across the rest of Canada. So Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, going all the way to the Arctic eventually. All the way south, I drove around Alaska, and then around the United States, going all the way to the border with Mexico, following the west coast, and then across to just north of the border with Mexico, all the way to Key West, and then Key West north, following the east coast, all the way to Washington, Baltimore, and then I drove back to the Arctic, again going around the province of Ontario. So
Marcelo, can I just stop you for a second, just on this idea of your journey? It's. I think that this will resonate with. It certainly resonates with me, but I suspect with some students, the extent to which you went to follow through with your goals, you were undeterred, maybe annoyed and frustrated by what the Ontario government had said, but that didn't stop you in any way. You just found another way. And I just wondered if there are any students who are curious about this trip that Marcelo undertook, I could speak to it in terms of many things, but this is your class, not my class. So I'd like to give the students a chance to really talk to Marcelo about this incredible trip. In India, for example, do you have any questions? Feel free. Go ahead. Just give us your
Hi.
name.
Maybe heard. Okay. Hi. My name is Ian. I'm from Kenya, and yeah, we happen to have a lot of debate back home about conserving, like moving away from from our reliance on natural resources like fossil fuels and moving towards wind, particularly because that's a resource back home. But one of the strongest arguments we always have against it is that it's so resource intensive to start that it can never be truly brought in from low income, like countries that have average low incomes. So I was just thinking if you could comment on the applicability of this newly discovered sustainable technologies in such context, because we want to like move towards global sustainability and not just where the countries that can afford it, you know. So from your experience, how would your prospects of sustainability moving forward apply to low income situations?
Can I just jump in? What's your name again? It's Ian. Ian, Ian, thank you very much. It's a very good question, and I'm going to let Marcelo answer. And you have now broken the ice for all of the students. You're the brave one. Now there will be, I'm sure, more students asking questions. Marcelo, go ahead.
Oh, Ian, that's a very good question. No, I'm not familiar with the cost of wind generator, um, but the technology, it's pretty simple. You can literally make it in your backyard. All you need is an electric motor, and the sky is the limit. Um, th- th- the beauty of something like wind generator is that the simplicity of the technology. Uh, you can go to an auto rack and you can pretty much get parts there that to make your wind generator. So of course that the efficiency may not be the greatest, yet you could be producing electricity locally. There are some advantages of you producing electricity locally if it is from wind or solar. One is for food security because you're producing your uh, energy uh, locally, and also national security because your country won't depend on imports or exploration of fossil fuel. So there is some advantage of that. I would, for anyone questioning, should we stay with fossil fuel or should we move on to wind or solar? Just on the topic of national security alone, I think you have a very strong base to go on that route. Ian, I hope I answered some questions. I was able to help a little bit.
Good. Go ahead, Ian, if you want to follow up, or anyone else in India. Cyrus, I see you heading. Please just give your name and maybe either stand or put your head in between the shoulders of others so we can see it. Excellent. Go ahead. Uh, we can't hear you in India. Is your microphone is on? Just a second. Go.
Oh, sorry. Uh, my name is Adolfo and I am from Colombia. Uh, my question is, due to the fact that we live in a world in which the economy is based on fossil fuels, how difficult do you find the implementation of these new technologies to the world?
Olá, Adolfo. Muito gusto responder tu pergunta. Adolfo, it's nice to answer your question. Well, there is. Let's talk about the alternatives. Okay, A few years ago, I was talking to someone high up in the Ministry of Energy of the UAE, and he told me that the UAE alone, they have about 150 years left of oil.
That's the
So
sorry, the UAE, United Arab Emirates.
that's correct. That's one country. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in my presentation, we the world was running on whale oil. We didn't stop using um, whale oil because we ran out of whale. We move into coal. From coal, we move into petroleum, and we are not going to stop using petroleum because we are going to run out of it. As a matter of fact, I think we'll still have many hundreds of years left by the time we switch to renewables. Um, for me, the driving force will be pollution, climate change. Um, I stopped buying gasoline back in May. I parked my car and I and consciously, in good conscience, I could not go to a gas station and buy any more gasoline because I I remember and I saw um, growing up what the exploration, the use of gasoline was doing. It was people were getting sick. It was contaminating oil. It was contaminating the air. It was contaminating the water, and I just can't do it. And I perhaps because of what I do and the kind of people that contact me and my circle of friends, and I see more and more people developing that kind of conscience. People, but the most sensitive part of the human body is a pocket, and
Say that. That's. I'm going to have you repeat that. That is a wonderful line. I want to cut that out and put it up on the wall of a classroom. The most sensitive part of the human body is the pocket. Now that's classic. Sorry, I just had to add that.
thank you. And and that is going to change how we do things because when you look at solar cells, for example, the Moore's law applies to the manufacturing of solar cells. The price have been dropping so much that it's viable. It but let's look at what's available. We have solar, we have wind, we can generate electricity using hydropower plants. We can have a thermal generating plant using coal, natural gas, or diesel. We have nuclear, and just as some examples. Now, when you look at nuclear, for example, two things comes to mind: Chernobyl and Fukushima. Now, one thing that people don't talk about the use of nuclear energy is the exploration, and also the nuclear, the radioactive waste. Now, when you look at a thermal generating plant, you're looking at coal, pollution, the CO2 emissions, uh, diesel, same thing, and natural gas a little bit cleaner, but still when you look at hydro electricity, that's probably the best in out of those so far. But when you look at a country like Brazil, Brazil in 2003, 2004, they began having very long droughts, and pretty much the grid in Brazil is sustained by hydro electricity. Now, because of the droughts, they start having brownouts, and then um, the answer that the government at the time, which actually is still the same government, their answer to solving the problem was let's build more hydropower plants. They missed the boat on that one. The problem wasn't the lack of hydroelectric power plants. It was a lack of water. You can have as many hydropower plants as you want. If it doesn't rain, you have zero electricity. Now, when you look at wind, people may say, well, it is not windy all the time, and solar, same thing. You don't generate electricity at night, and if it is overcast, you generate less. But you can have a combination of both. You can have a wind, you can have solar. Um, Now, one thing we do have to improve is storage, and batteries coming a long way. So, uh, Adolfo, it was a long answer for you, but um, price will dictate, the market will dictate, and the cost of wind turbines has come down, the cost of solar has come down, and I think that's going to be the driving force. Either uh, and why I'm excited about the future
Marcel, as the
is
costs come down, as the costs let the market dictate to some extent, as it comes down. Let me stop for a second because I noticed that there was a student, I think in Russia, who did want to ask something. I may be wrong, and also there's a student here behind me, Jason, who would like to comment. Did I see in Russia? Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to ask how long was the road from to Antarctica?
Arctic to the west. To the Arctic.
To Antarctica. From US.
Keep going, good, keep going.
From Cuba.
So, I wanted to ask.
I wanted to ask how long was the road to Antarctica from Key West?
How long was the route from Key West in Florida to the Arctic?
To the Arctic.
Antarctica.
okay.
Arctic, yes.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm sorry I didn't get your name.
My name is Lev. Lev.
Liv.
Yes.
Go ahead, Marcelo.
Thank you for
And
the
make sure
question,
you
Liv.
mute your microphone in Russia.
Thank you for the question, Liv. Well, I have driven 36,400 kilometers with the solar car. Out of that, 36,200 was around North America. Um, and so I guess let me tell a little bit more about the car. It goes from 0 to 85 kilometers an hour in 6 seconds. It's very fast. The top speed is 120 kilometers an hour. Now the car was built to set a record. It wasn't built to be driven every day. So there is a few things that the car doesn't have. For example, air conditioning and heater. So if it is hot outside, it is hot inside the solar car. If it is cold outside, it is very cold inside the solar car. So when I drove in the Arctic on the frozen Arctic Ocean, it was cold. Um, Now we get about talking a little bit more about the car. The car has 893 cells. They generate about 900 watts. To put that in perspective, a toaster consumes about 1,000 watts. So with less energy than what a toaster consumes, we could charge a battery on the solar car. In the summer, it takes
Marcelo,
about
a
10
second.
hours.
I'm writing this down because we're also tweeting information out. We have Chris over here who's our kind of live reporter who's tweeting things out that are interesting, and there's a lot that's interesting. But let me just make sure I heard this correctly. Um, you were using 900 watts, and a toaster is 1,000 watts. You were using less energy than a toaster. Is that correct?
Uh, that's how much electricity the solar panel of the solar car produces. So we have the cells we used, they're about 16%. They have about 16% efficiency. So even the solar cells today are more efficient than that. But yeah, so 900 watts was being generated by the solar panel, and a toaster consumes about 1,000 watts.
Sorry, go ahead. Um, maybe maybe we want to move for another question. Lev, do you want to follow up with a question for Marcelo before we go to Jason here? Is there anything else you would like to ask? Or another student there? I see someone. Yes. Come on. Come to the front, please, and tell us your name.
My name is Ksenia. So, Marcelo, I wanted to ask you, how was the reaction of people that saw your car? Because I don't think that they saw such cars before.
Well, thank you for your question. Um, the reaction of people was very interesting. I had people running away from the solar car. I had people scared by the looks of the solar car. As a matter of fact, in Alaska, someone called 911 to report a UFO on the road. So the police dispatched two cruisers. They chased me down. They blocked the solar car. And I was pulled over 26 times by the authorities. I did a presentation in Washington, D.C. while driving the solar car. While in Washington, I got pulled over by the SWAT. I also got pulled over by the Secret Service police.
The Secret Service, are you serious?
Yes. Well, I had to prove that I'm from this planet, so I could continue to my trip.
That's fabulous. Jason has a question here. There's some really good information here. I love these facts. It's the old journalist producer in me loves these concrete details. You know. Anyways, here's Jason.
Hi, yes. Okay, sure. So, Ian earlier was talking about how it's a little difficult for low budget income areas to build the amazing car that you have. What I was kind of thinking about is there any advice that you'd have for people nowadays who want to make a difference in maybe smaller ways and hopefully build up their confidence to do something like maybe a car? Because as you might know, in the last maybe 5 years, the amount of technology that's accessible to the everyday person is far more, far greater and far more impressive than it was in maybe even 10 or 15 years ago. So I was just wondering if you have any advice in your time to make this incredible piece of technology. If there was anything you've come across that people don't really know that they have the ability to do. Yeah, if there's anything that yeah.
Well, I thank you for your question. I think if we're looking at how we have to look at how we impact the world, and as a consumer, we have a lot to say. Every time you buy a piece of clothing, food, you have an impact. You vote with your dollars, with your money. You either support an industry or not. So I think it would be great if we could develop um, a bit more conscious about how we buy products and what kind of products we are buying and the impact that it has. Um, I'll give you an example. I do fly to Brazil often, and I remember when I began flying about 24 years ago, flying over the Amazon forest, and more recently. Um, and I see a big difference. That it kind of breaks my heart to see the Amazon forest disappearing. Um, and so I decided to take a personal, to do something personal. I love meat. I really enjoy a steak. I like the texture. I like the taste. I like the culture. I like what's involved when you have a barbecue with friends but I can't help um, if I see what the production of meat is doing to Brazil and around the world. For example, um, Russia is importing lots of meat, particularly chicken, from Brazil due to some of the political sanctions involving the European Union. Um, and so in good conscience, I cannot eat meat. So I decided to become a vegetarian. Uh, so I'm not contributing for a tree to be taken down. And also another thing that they do is if they're also producing soy, so they're taking down forests to produce soy or to raise cattle and to feed not only Brazil. Brazil has what, about 4 billion heads of cattle. That is a lot. Um, and when you look at the Amazon forest, for example, there's a tree, one of the trees is called jatobá, and that tree can live up to 3,000 years. And I see people in Canada uh, that have purchased uh, hardwood from Brazil to put on their floors at home. A friend of mine did that. I refuse to go into his house. I just won't go into his house because I refuse to step on his beautiful hardwood flooring that was made with trees that can be 3,000 years old. So um, it, there is a lot of things we can change. And I think we have to develop that conscience. It's um, like how many trees are we going to be cutting down before we say enough is enough, right?
Well,
And how
I was just going to say that's a very important thing you said is when is the point when we personally, in our own hearts, say enough is enough and we start to care. This is a very personal choice. Unfortunately, time is now ticking on the planet because we know there are consequences and that we have to deal with. And so we don't have as much time as we might think we do. I just want to ask if there are any students who would like to talk to Marcelo some more about the adventure or the big ideas that he has. I want to make sure you have enough time because I'm looking at our clock here and we have about 20 minutes left or so. And so I want to make sure that everyone has enough time to really talk to an extraordinary individual. Okay, I see in India, here, there go the hands, and then we're going to come back to Canada, and we can always come back to Russia as well. Please pass the microphone around in India. No, the microphone is off. Can't hear you. No, it's still off. Interesting. Can't hear you. Might be. Give them a moment to adjust their microphone. We've learned doing global classes that the audio part is so critical. Okay, should we move over? Okay, are you, we'll go, yes, okay, in Canada? All right, so Chris? Here comes a question or comment from Chris, and then we'll come back to India. Go ahead, just hold the microphone.
Okay, so you mentioned that you do a lot of flying between here and Brazil, and I'm also a pilot, so this gave me like the perfect entryway to ask this since we're on the topic of sustainability. What do you think about the US Navy potentially converting salt water into jet fuel?
This is the first time I hear about that. If they can do that and prove that it's they're not putting more energy to get jet fuel than they're getting out, it would be interesting to see the technology. Perhaps if they do have the technology, we could apply the technology into other means of applications like farming and other things. So if they can do that, that would be fantastic.
Great. Okay, I think India's solved their audio problem. Just mention your name first and then go ahead.
Hello, my name is Astrid. I'm from Norway. You initially talked about how it's the political will that we're lacking and not the technology, but many times I've heard from government bodies that they claim it is the technology that is lacking. So when you developed this kind of technology, did you feel like people in especially political bodies met you in a more positive way? Or do you think that was just a way of avoiding the avoiding having to do these big chances, these big changes?
Thank you for your question. That's a very good question. I still will. I still. How can I say? And in my mind, it's political. When you look at times of, let's say, if you look at the Second World War, and you're looking at the United States, they were producing hundreds of thousands of trucks every day. And they overnight they were able to stop the production and switch into other things. Now, that goes to show that if we have the political will, we can find a way. Now, talking about technology, the first solar car was built in 1949. 1949, that was a long time ago. So technology has been around. What we need is a political will. I'll give you another example. A gentleman that I had the opportunity to talk to uh, back in the late 80s, early 90s, he spent 4 years fighting the the city of London, England, to get permission to install a power outlet on the sidewalk in front of his home to power his electric car. 4 years. That's so. A gentleman, he could be. I think it's absurd that we have to educate politicians. And now, when you look at fossil fuel, for example, and you look at the automakers, we call it ICE, internal combustion engine vehicles. So an ICE vehicle, it has a lot of moving parts. It has the exhaust, catalytic converter, it has air filter, fuel filters, spark plugs. It has a lot of moving parts. So you end up spending over the lifetime of that vehicle a lot of money. While an electric vehicle has very few moving parts, and there is very little that you're going to spend on maintenance on the life of that vehicle. So that's why I mentioned earlier the pocket is the most sensitive part of the human body, because that has been the driving force. But that is changing. There is more, pretty much every or most automakers today are making electric cars. When you look at China, for example, there are entire police fleets of electric vehicles. That's exciting. So that goes to show that if there is a political will, there is a way. And so that's changing. And
Marcelo, I was just going to just stop you to just accentuate and punctuate a great point you made when you told the story about the Second World War and how, we were able to change our production methods on a dime quickly just because of the exigencies or pressures of war. That really, I'm going to maybe rewrite the Marcelo or try to rewrite the Marcelo philosophy for a moment and say the most sensitive part of the body is not the pocket, but the human will. And that when we decide that we can do something, we'll do it. The question is, when will we decide we want to do something about it? But once we decide, a lot can be solved, right?
absolutely.
So I just wanted to punctuate that point about will, such a great point. Where there's a will, there's a way. I saw in India more hands, and I want to make sure everyone has a chance. You may not see Marcelo again for a while. So any questions there? We'll come back to Russia, and also I'll come back to Canada too.
Hello,
So,
my name is Sarah. Hi, can you hear me? My name is Sarah. I'm from Venezuela. First, I want to thank you for your time and for your presentation. And secondly, I want to know eh, in how many years you think people from cities like Lima or Sao Paulo will actually be able to buy solar cars and use them?
Mm. Uh, Sara, gracias por tu pregunta. Thanks for your question. Um, that's a very good question. Now, I having built and driven a solar car, I have to be very realistic about what can be achieved. Solar is not a standalone technology. I can't, a solar um, alone vehicle is not a practical vehicle. I spent about a month in Vancouver waiting for the sunshine. So you can call your professor and say, I'm sorry, I can't come to school today because it's rainy, it's overcast. So what is practical is an electric car. Now you can have an electric car covered in solar cells or even equipped with a small wind generator. So when it's stationary, it can generate some of its own electricity. And a cool thing about electricity is that you can generate electricity from a variety of sources and you can do it locally. So that is practical, having an electric car. And it's awesome to see a number of companies today, like Tesla. Look at their awesome car that you can go 300 miles on a charge. That's pretty awesome. And now to answer your question regarding cities like São Paulo, when do I see people driving electric cars or solar cars? Well, as I said, solar alone is not, you cannot rely on solar alone, but you can drive electric cars. And talking about cities, I have some exciting news about the city of Vancouver. The city of Vancouver on the west coast of Canada, they changed their building code. So now all new constructions of residential or commercial, if it has a parking spot, it must have a, uh, a power plug, a power outlet to charge an electric car. So they are already anticipating that the future is electric, and they're paving the way for it. That's really exciting.
that's, I'm just looking at my students who are telling me they knew. I didn't know that, and I'm learning. Anyways, Oshawa's a long way from Vancouver. That's my excuse, right? But I should have known. That's excellent to hear. Progress is happening in our country too. Now, is there anything anyone wants to add? Okay, so I'm going to give the microphone to Chris, and then we'll continue on.
Okay, so this is actually totally irrelevant, but can we buy those Power of One shirts? I've been looking at it the whole class.
Can we? But where can we buy them? Tell us what it means. The symbol means as well.
Well, for me, it was coming up with the name had a lot to do with myself personally, because it's going back to what I said. I was looking around me. I see a lot of need to better ourselves, and I believe there is. I believe that one person can change the world. So that's why I came up with the name, The Power of One. I believe one person can make a difference. As for the shirt, it's also a mathematical equation. So it's x at the power of 1, which is x. So and I will make the t-shirts available on the project website. So it's not available at the moment for purchase, but I'll make it available. Give me about a couple months or so, it will be there. So you'll be able to order a t-shirt online.
Excellent. So we've actually inspired Marcelo right now, though you have been inspiring us, but now once again students have a way of doing this, inspiring the teachers. So you're going to put some into production for us, and we can, get this t-shirt. That would be wonderful. Promise?
Absolutely. Actually, it's interesting. I do get the opportunity to travel around the world, speaking at conference events, universities, and I quite a few times I had people asking for the T-shirt, so I will make that available.
Excellent. And now we understand the story of the symbol, the X and the O and the 1. It all fits nicely together. Eddie, in Russia, would you like to add anything? I see a hand. Come on up and give us your name, please.
Hello, my name is Anne. Can you hear me? I would like to know what problems can the owners of solar cars have? Is it difficult to fix the problem?
And thank you very much for your question. And actually, I have an interesting um, episode that happened while driving the solar car. I actually had more problems with the support vehicle that was following the solar car than the solar car itself. As I mentioned, an electric vehicle has very few moving parts, so very little maintenance. Or I encountered some problems, but it was due to a lack of the design. So we made some changes and everything was good. So we had more problems with the support vehicle, including one time we were driving the support that were on in one of the drives we did, which happened to be the longest drive out of the tour. I had to stop because the support vehicle ran out of fuel. So that day we drove 285 miles. That's about 480 kilometers roughly. And we had to stop because the support vehicle ran out of gasoline.
Well, there you go. You see, it is the old ways, the old order that has to change, and it's the new way that's stronger, right? The solar-powered vehicle is the stronger thing than the fossil fuel-driven one. Anyways, okay. Would you like to? Oh, go ahead. In Russia, please give us your name and ask away.
Marcelo, I want to know, so can you say what are your future plans? So what other things do you want to work on substantive energy? Sustainable energy.
Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
What things do you want to work on sustainable energy?
Okay.
What are your future plans?
Thank you. Well, I'm excited about technology, but so there's some of my interests are has to do with atmospheric condenser. Basically, is getting water from the air and using that as a way of providing clean water. And there are some of machines available in the market today. I just want to I want to work on that a little bit. Another interest of mine is using light as a germicide, working with UV lights. And another personal interest is actually I am in the process of designing efficient home, a home that is pretty much neutral. It produces its own electricity, produces its own water, and treats its own waste. Um, Building a home uses a lot of energy, especially in cold climate countries like today in Moscow. It's -5 degrees, so Canada, like Russia, consumes a lot of energy. One thing that I thought was interesting when I first moved to Canada was to have a fridge inside the house while outside was -10, -15, and I kind of like I thought it was interesting that how come we're not uh, using the coal that's outside to cool our food, and that's one thing that's going to be on the back burner. It's perhaps one day making a fridge or a box that could be used in countries that you take advantage of the weather that's outside to cool to cool your food. So I have a variety of interests. I'm also writing one out of three books. A book on the project, another book driving to the Arctic. The other book is about crossing the ice road. I'm also uh, going speaking tours. I speak at events, conference, corporate, private events all over the world. That's very exciting. So every time I do that, I feel I have the opportunity to inspire people. And in the process, I ask people to follow their dreams and help the environment. So if I most likely will be doing that for a very long time. I'm also planning on continue to drive the solar car. I haven't driven the car for a few years, and I kind of miss that. So my dream journey with the car would be to cross the Americas, go all the way from the North Pole, from the Arctic, all the way to the tip of Chile and Argentina. So that would be about 25,000 kilometers. By the way, I'll be looking.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask because we're getting close to the end, and there's a couple of things I still want to do. There was a student who asked me before we started the class today, but I'll ask her question for her. Or do you want to ask it? Or I'll ask. Okay, because we're running out. She wondered, where is the car right now?
It's at home in my garage in Toronto.
And is it in good shape and ready to be taken out for another, long adventure?
Not at the moment. The car was taken apart. I removed the batteries, the seats, and I just to clean up and do some maintenance. And it will take me a few months to put it back together.
I see a hand. I think we have time for one or two more. We'll go to India, then we'll come back to Canada. Then I'd like to wrap up and let Marcelo give some final words. And then I would like to direct everybody to a website where they can make comments about this class and continue the discussion. So we have to do all of that in the next 9 minutes. So I think we're going to be okay. In India, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Pranav and I'm from Oman in India. Oman's a country in the Middle East, one of the neighboring countries of UAE, where temperatures reach as high as like 55 degrees. And I've heard of a study which says that the efficiency of solar panels goes down as the temperature increases. So how do you think that we can actually overcome this thing? And like in colder countries where the temperature is really low, there's not enough sunshine and we don't receive that much of solar energy.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a very good question. The solar panels, a solar cell will lose efficiency not only with heat but also with time. But good news is, depending if it is monocrystalline or polycrystalline, it will vary the drop in efficiency. But once it drops, in terms of time, it will remain that. There are panels in Germany they're about over 50 years old. They're still running. Now, when you're talking about the drop in efficiency due to heat, the percentage is so small that it shouldn't be a deciding factor if you should use that technology or not. The percentage, I can't remember the figures now, but I think is the 1% efficiency for every 5 degrees Celsius. So even at 40 degrees or 45 degrees Celsius in hot, sunny day in Oman, the drop in efficiency, it's very small. So it's still worth using it. By the way, the UAE also has a solar desalination plant. So they're using solar energy to produce water. Well, that's pretty exciting. That goes to show you that technology can be used. It's already being used.
Excellent. Now I'm just going to go here. Was there one comment? Come to Kyle, and then we're going to wrap up with final words. And also, I'd like to take you to the website, to the forum page. Make sure all the students know about that. So let me give the microphone to Kyle.
Hello, how's it going? Can everybody hear me? Just want to make sure. Okay, so my question was, you said that you drove a lot in that car. I just wanted to know what was it like being in it for so many for so long. Um, did you how for how many hours you drove? Were you allowed to take breaks, or were you kind of just trapped in there and had this and had to sleep in there? I'm just wondering. And it's kind of a two-part question, but my second question was, while you were driving it, did you stay on the main roads, or when you were transferring, did you take the highways? Just
The human experience of being on the edge of new exploration. Tell us about that.
Well, thank you, Kyle. That's a good question. Well, the X of one, the seat was molded to my body, so extremely comfortable to drive the car. As a matter of fact, it's a bit too comfortable. I have fallen asleep twice driving the car. First time was in Chicago. It was a hot day. I stopped at the traffic light and I just fell asleep while driving the car. I woke up with all the cars moving. Um, and The longest day I drove the car was 17 hours. The longest consecutive hours driving the car without taking a break was 6 hours. And I made some personal sacrifices while driving the car, and it was all voluntary, self-inflicted, you may say. So I would uh, dehydrate myself while driving the car, so I didn't have to stop to go to the washroom or anything. And at the end of the day, when I would stop driving, then I would drink lots of water and eat well. So I did that for about a year. Spent about a year traveling with the car. So it was one of the consequences of that is that after I stopped driving the car, I had to, perhaps this might be too much information, but I had to retrain my bladder to because I was dehydrating, keeping myself dehydrated for such a long period of times. After a year of doing that, I had to re-educate, to retrain my bladder. So that was one consequence that I wasn't expecting, but I would do it all over again.
Listen, when Marco Polo walked all the way from Venice and then got on, horses and kept walking for 2 years to China, 700 years ago, he got very sick and almost died and kept going and going until he got to the end. So, these kinds of human achievements and taking us and moving the human race forwards in a small, small way require great personal sacrifice. And you've demonstrated that. I think we need to wrap this up. We're getting very close to the end. Just a second. Okay, hold on. Okay. Oh, yeah, the second question. Did you take the main streets or did you find other ways to travel?
Well, in some parts of Canada, there is only one road, so I had to be on that road. The car is licensed as a regular car, so it can be driven on any public road. The exception was Ontario, but that has changed today, so I can elaborate on that a little bit more. Because I could not drive the car in Ontario, and I had driven the car all the way to the Arctic, around North America, I want to inspire people back home in the province of Ontario. So I did a protest. I decided to pull the car. Since the government said I could not drive the car, I said, fine, I'm going to pull the car by hand. They said I could not drive it, but they didn't say anything that I couldn't pull it. So in 2011, I pulled the car by hand. I walked 160 kilometers from Niagara Falls to Toronto to protest the government. And by doing that, it raised a lot of media attention. I ended up having a meeting with the premier, with the Minister of Transportation at the time, which was Kathleen Wynne. She happens to be the premier today. And I'm happy to say that solar cars can be driven in Ontario today. Yay! Woo!
Tremendous. I think I saw um, a hands go up in India. Uh, we're running out of time, but you know what? If there are questions, we'll always find the time. Where there's a will, there's time, always. So, did I see hands there? Do you want to ask anything in India? Go ahead. Make sure you turn the mic on, that's all.
Hello. Hello, my name is Ali. I'm from Guatemala, and I want to ask this question. Today, airplanes are one of the most important ways of transportation in the world, but they depend on fossil fuels. What do you think that will happen the day that they run out? And do you think that solar energy or other kind of energy will be able to move airplanes and keep the communication through all the world?
Eli, that's a very good question, and the answer is no, and the answer is also a yes. What I mean by that, again, solar is not a standalone technology, so for you to have an airplane powered by equipped with solar cells to carry heavy loads, that won't happen. But technology is getting better. Now, I don't know if you're aware of it, but there are already small electric airplanes. And I was thinking about that some time ago. I think of small islands like in the Caribbean, for example, where you have small airplanes flying from island to island to transport people. Well, you can have an electric airplane doing that transportation. An electric airplane will do up to 300 kilometers today. I just saw some news about an electric plane in southern Brazil. I believe it's a two-seater that can do 300 kilometers. So that's pretty exciting. I think we are. I don't think we're going to run out of fossil fuels. We are developing batteries that have a high energy density. If you look at batteries, we went from lead acid. Actually, we still have lead acid in vehicles. We went from lead acid to nickel metal hydrate. Then we found the lithium-ion polymer cells, and there is also a lot of work being done with supercapacitors. And I think there is a lot of potential in supercapacitors in the future. Technology is still in its infancy, but we're getting there. So to answer your question, I don't think fossil fuel has a lot of, it's a very energy dense medium. So once we find a battery technology that can be compared or comparable with the energy density that we find in fossil fuels, then you may see a change in what's powering planes in the future.
On that final comment, Marcelo, I think we should wrap this up. I apologize to any students who have questions. Still, there will be more global classes. We will be having another class with Marcelo in the next semester, wherever he is in the world. First, I would like to thank Marcelo. A big clap, please, for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you all in Russia, Irena, Cyrus, and students in India. I only want to say, as we wrap this up, that there is a website called the Global Class. I see a student in India on a laptop right now. You can actually go there to the Global Class. You just simply enter the Global Class, and when you come to it, it's accessible to everybody. We have built this for all the students. We will be posting this class shortly as a resource so you can watch Marcelo again. But also, please, if you have the time, in the next 5 minutes or so, you can go on your phones or on your laptop to the forum page. The student in India who has her laptop open, are you able to access the website right now? Just give a nod if you can see it. theglobalclass.org. But if you just enter the global class in the search bar, You will see it? Great. Then in the top navigation bar, go to Engage. The Engage, and you have a pull-down menu there, and then go to Forum. And click on Forum, and in a moment, great. In a moment, when we end the class, we're going to create a topic called Global Class Limits for today's class. And once that topic is open, please leave us your comments about what you thought of the class, of Marcelo, and the ideas that he's brought to the class. And let's continue the discussion on these very important ideas, and also the incredible grit that Marcelo showed in helping to lead us in a new direction, all of us, for now and for the future. And so I thank you again, and we'll see you. Marcelo, do you have something to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to throw a challenge at everyone. Once again, thank you all for being here today. It's exciting. But I want to challenge you. I want you to think that there is no limit to what you can do, to what you can accomplish. Think that the only obstacle between you and your dreams, whatever it is yourself. But now comes a challenge. I want you for the next 28 days, change something, anything to help the environment. So I'm not going to tell you what to do, what to change, but think of how you go about your day and what can you change. For example, you can, for 20 days, do not use water bottles, or walk, or instead of taking the elevator, you can climb the stairs. So your challenge now, for the next 28 days, what are you going to do to help the planet?
Well, you know what we'll do on the website is that on the home page, we will actually promote this as the 28-day challenge. It will be right on the home page, on the landing page, and then we will open a topic in the forum page called the 28-day challenge, where we can all be adding to this over the next 28 days. This is not for marks. This is completely on a voluntary basis. But we will continue this on the website, Marcelo, and see which students in this class today take up his 28-day challenge. All right, let's all try. One small thing.
And tell us what it is. Tell us what challenge you decide to take.
Excellent. Let's do that. So we'll continue on the website. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you again in another global class. Take care.